And we're rolling.
Good. Okay, so as if nothing ever happened.
Exactly.
IBS, EDS. So this is a piece of the puzzle. And these are quotes. Scientists were shocked to learn that about 90% of the fibers in the primary visceral nerve, the vagus nerve, carry information from the gut to the brain and not the other way around. Given the two brains, the gut and the head, commonalities, other depression treatments that target the mind can unintentionally impact the gut. The enteric nervous system, your gut, uses more than 30 neurotransmitters just like the brain, and in fact, 95% of the body's serotonin is found in the bowels. Because antidepressant medications called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors increase serotonin levels, it's little wonder that meds meant to cause chemical changes in the mind often provoke GI issues as a side effect. And then also it's interesting that they use mind, which is mind, even though it's a quote, it's actually, as we know in yoga, is actually used correctly, as we learned in, I think, level 2 with Matthew Taylor, the brain. This is our physical computer. This is not our mind. It's our physical computer, and our mind is everything that we choose to upload onto that computer. Everything that we choose to upload onto that computer, that is our mind. So if we choose to watch a crappy TV show, the chemicals going in aren't going to change the information that you just put in your mind and swirling around, right? So mentioning the vagus nerve, we talk about it a lot in yoga therapy. Just look, just take a gander at how incredible the vagus nerve is and how it innervates almost every organ of the body. It's just absolutely incredible. Statistics, we're not going to stick on that. It's a rare disease, basically. How is EDS diagnosed? Physical exam, Baton Brighton, skin test, exam medical history, echocardiogram because it affects the ANS, the autonomic nervous system. Echocardiogram is important. EEG, electroencephalogram, that tests the neural synapses of the brain to see if they have natural brain function or not. Extensive family history, genetic testing. So here's an example of the Baton score, pretty basic to test for hypermobility. The woman at the top just looks like she's doing a forward yoga bend, right? Study on efficacy of Baton scale. The scale neglects articular involvement of the knees, elbows, and digits of the hand, and therefore gives no true indication of the degree of joint hypermobility. The Brighton scale is a little more in depth. There has to be we'll go over some of this. A Baton score of 4 out of 9. Arthralgia for more than 3 months and four or more joints. Back pain for more than 3 months. Spondylosis, remember that's the degeneration of the discs, intervertebral discs. Spondylolysis, the stress fracture of the vertebra, and spondylolisthesis would be the slippage anteriorly in the spine to the vertebra. Dislocation, subluxation for more than one joint, and one joint on more than one occasion. Rheumatism, all the inflammatory diseases and the bones, the joints, and the fibrous tissues. Epicondylitis is when it happens from where the forearm attaches to the elbow. Tenosynovitis is the sheaths of tendons attaching to the bone, inflammation there. And of course, we all know bursitis, the fluid-filled sacs that cushion our muscles and our bones and our tissues. I'll go to marfanoid habitus. This is interesting because it's when they have, usually our arm span is about the same as our height, and this type, their arm span is actually longer. Arachnodactyly, arachno means spider, dactyly means digits, fingers. I'll show you a picture of their hands actually kind of look like spider. Their palms are very long and their fingers are very long. Positive Steinberg is just very hypermobility of the wrist and that's all we're going to do on that. If you're interested in that, you can look more at that. Here's a picture of the fingers, the hands, the hypermobility. Here's some of the things they do to brace the fingers, the spine, the knee, the neck.
Goodness.
Just stay.
I think it's better to walk out that way and go like on that lawn rather than there. Because
Good
you're still
idea.
kind of by the buildings if
I
it's
think it's
closer.
Frank's.
Good idea,
You
yeah.
can run on the grass.
Dysfunction.
Or it could be a dysfunction, yeah.
I think it's stopping.
Yeah, I think it's...
Yeah, it did.
Okay,
stop.
okay, thank God. All right. Bag of comorbidities.
This is
Especially fixed.
This is still going.
Turn
Is
the
anyone
lights
going
off.
out?
No.
Good to do it by disco.
Turn the lights off now,
It's your disco presentation. Such a radiant presentation.
The fire trucks have to come.
The firemen have to come.
Fireman, that's what I like. Okay, should I continue or?
Yes.
Or are you guys still too distracted by the blinking strobe? Okay. Should we?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So a bag of comorbidities. So here's a list of common misdiagnoses and comorbidities. So you can imagine why they would be misdiagnosed if they have all these secondary diseases, why they would go to the doctor and they actually do have this, and they're diagnosed with that, but ultimately then they find out when all of these coexist together that they actually have EDS. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, all kinds, arthritis, MS and other immune disorders. So remember, MS is when the immune system attacks the myelin sheath of the nerve, the protective covering of the nerve. Growing pains in children, child abuse because of easy bruising. Anxiety, stress, depression, drug addicts, they're in a lot of pain. They need pain medication. Benign joint hypermobility, IBS. Is the IBS because they're all on antidepressants because they tend to be depressed, and wouldn't you if you had that kind of disease? Or is it actually because of the EDS? Incontinence, nausea. My patient had an inexplicable feeling, strange feeling in her belly. She said she can't explain it, it just comes. And she said it feels like her psoas is tight. Well, her psoas was tight. However, that's not exactly what she was trying to describe to me. Asthma, hypochondria. Prognosis, so the life expectancy for vascular type is shortened to about 40 because of the rupture of large blood vessels in organ. It's very sad. Now zoom me into hypermobility type. Joint hypermobility is the dominant manifestation. Hypervigilance, they're extremely hypervigilant about how they move, and they tend to, if they've seen a lot of doctors, at least my patient did, get to know their body pretty well if they're interested in helping themselves. Affects all joints of the body. Recurring joint subluxations and dislocations are common occurrences. Shoulders, patella, and temporomandibular joint dislocate frequently. Dysautonomia is when they can be faint or nauseous or dizziness when could happen when you're working with them. But think about your autonomic nervous system and what it controls, all the different control functions that you don't have to think about. So digestion, kidney function, lymphatic function, dilation and constriction of the pupils of the eyes, your blood pressure, your heart rate, your nails grow, your hair grows. This is all your ANS, your autonomic nervous system. Chronic pain, well-established cardinal manifestation of hypermobility type. Pain proportion not congruent to physical and or radiological findings. This is yoga. Origin of pain not clearly understood. Some causes include muscle spasm, joint dislocation, and feelings of disconnection. Skin is smooth and velvety with or without hyperextensibility. Bruising tendencies are present but quite variable in this type. Remember, this is the hypermobility type. Invisible disability because people many times appear healthy despite this disease. To date, no distinctive biochemical findings identified for the majority of the hypermobility cases. So this is a very interesting article linking psychology and connective tissue. Very interesting. Data clearly shows a strong association between anxiety disorders and joint hypermobility and demonstrated a high rate of these psychopathological features in EDS-HT. Similar results were found for depression. And they give 3 hypotheses in this article. 1, psychopathological symptoms as consequence of EDS-HT. EDS-HT is a consequence of psychopathological distress. That's interesting. EDS-HT and psychopathological distress as independent consequences of pre-existing pathogenic systems. Think about that. Just think about that. Observe that. Monomaya. So this gets a little juicy here because we're looking at the actual thing. So these are just a few of her quotes. She's a very smart girl. Over a 2-year period of time, these were only some of the things that I put into the monomyelin category. I fear irreparable damage or an orthopedic injury. I no longer understand what I should be feeling. Feels like there is a miscommunication in my body. Doctors have told me you're crazy, what you're feeling isn't actually happening, you're going to be on disability by 30. When I do anything mindlessly for too long, I get a feeling of being disconnected, disembodied, and disassociated with my body. Watching a serial killer show before bed calms me down.
Wow.
Interesting, right?
Very interesting.
Remember that. Precautions when working with EDSHT, fear, anxiety, depression. So think about working with someone and then think about what you're reading. Ligament laxity, easy dislocation of joints, muscle spasms, hypotonic muscles. So their muscles are weak. Hypertension in muscles. Their muscles are very tight. So imagine if you were a server, a waiter, waitress in a restaurant, and you were the only one that came in that night, and there was a whole floor, maybe 20, 30 tables, and you were the only one that came in that night. And imagine you had to take the workload of that entire room. Wouldn't you be a little stressed out? Yeah? So that's what's happening with the muscles here. The joints aren't stable, and the muscles are already weak. There's no fiber. There's not very many fibers. Some muscles are bigger, there's more fibers. So these muscles are hanging on for dear life, right? Hypersensitivity. So and that hypersensitivity actually is what helped me learn so much, because she was so hypersensitive. She knew almost all the muscles in her body, and she actually was a godsend to me. I learned so much from her. Increased range of motion, decreased range of motion of the joints. So my patient, when she was a trapeze artist, she said, well, I should just spin in my joints. She said, why should I stretch my muscles if I can just spin in my joints? That's what she said. Well, I guess she found out because she ended up with a lot of pain. But so they have increased range of motion, but then they start having pain, and in her case, then she started to understand that when she moved past a certain point, she no longer felt connected. So her learning curve was she wasn't going to move past a point of where she felt connected. And so in that sense, the range of motion is now decreased. Muscles intermittently fail to engage, easy bruising, osteoporotic bones, arthritic joints, psychological disorders, hypotension, sometimes her pulse was 45, decreased blood pressure, sometimes her blood pressure was like 87/60, respiration, sometimes it was only 4 breaths per minute, physical inactivity. Okay, something also to remember. Flexibility versus hypermobility. This is just to remind yourself, if you're going to work with someone like this, flexibility is the muscles, the space, the length of surrounding fascia. Hypermobility is ligament laxity. So muscles contract, generate force, and create movement. Joints hold bone to bone together, and they're the built-in backup system. Okay, ligaments do not contract, they do not generate force, and they do not create movement. Okay? That's important. Even with all this stuff.
You can go ahead. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Connective tissue. So we're coming back to the positive side of the fascia. We see what happens when we don't have that. Now we're coming back to the positive side. So the epidermis, largest organ of the skin, connective tissue, fascia, sense organ matrix, more highly innervated than muscles. This is Kelly Clancy. She is a structural medicine school in Washington. Jean-Claude Chamberteau, strolling under the skin. We saw part of that, I think, in level 2. Transfers information, the skin, the connective tissue, transfers information around the system faster than the nervous system. Think about that. Think about what not having collagen does on the negative side, and then think about the positive side of this.
Hang on.
Water break.
Sorry, honey.
Okay.
I think he'd probably say ignore that.
I think we're
That
gonna
would be my guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
Or get out now.
Or get out now, you better out.
Oh, please.
I think he was saying we're tested, right?
Nobody's in the hallway.
Yeah, it must be his house. You want to just wait for a second, or you want to go? It's up to you.
Well, can you guys concentrate, or
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm fine.
you're fine?
Let's pretend we're in India.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, let's just keep going. Let's just concentrate.
A couple like farm lines.
Let's just concentrate. Okay, let's try to concentrate. So, invisible negative versus invisible positive. So I want you to think about this for a moment. What things are invisible that are negative that we can't see? Like, and you can yell some out if you can think. Can you think of any?
Myelin sheaths.
Okay, good, but that we can't, that we couldn't see with our visible eye, even if it was dissected, like, it's microscopic.
Pollution.
Yeah. Huh?
Pollution.
Well, yeah, well, yes. Okay, so germs. Germs, energy.
Pharma points.
Okay, so the invisible negative, something like fear, a wind, you can't see that, that comes from a hurricane. Negative bacteria, so the bad bacteria. Think about the atom. Can you see the atoms moving in the table in front of you? I think not, right? Think about the atom bomb, right? How much do we believe in the atom bomb? And the atom cannot be seen with our naked eye, right? We believe so much in the negative and the destruction, right? We can definitely wrap our minds around that. How about the other side? What would be equal to the destruction that the atom bomb caused in the positive? What would be equal to that? Maybe healing? Maybe incredible healing? Okay, so some positive things that you can't see. Love. You can see the depiction of it, but you can't see love. Wind, functional breath, right? Healing, energy, chi, electromagnetic lines. You can't see that. Energy, prana, chi. So here's a biologist who did stem cell at Stanford University and then wrote this book. Dr. Bruce H. Lipton. The speed of electromagnetic energy signals is 186,000 miles per second, while the speed of a diffusible chemical is considerably less than 1 centimeter per second. Energy signals are 100 times more efficient and infinitely faster than physical chemical signaling. What kind of signaling would your trillion cell body prefer? So in my case study, I'm trained in energetics, and so I did that. That's one of my tools in my toolbox. The patient could move into full shoulder flexion. She could only move to about here when we were moving. Felt confident to move legs. I feel connected from head to toe. I can feel the energy move through me and open up blocked areas. I don't feel twisted anymore, and I feel twisted was the most repeated mantra that she gave me throughout the whole 2 years of working with her. Now going on to other modalities. So a master medicinal aromatherapist, this is my father, owns Wisdom of the Earth. He studied in France and Turkey, and he has built his business from the ground up. Single pure essences, they facilitate the oxygen, the prana within. Things that they all have in common, adaptogens, they're all adaptogens. Just like breath is an adaptogen, it goes in and harmonizes. To a greater or lesser degree, they increase immunity. Greater or lesser degree, they're antibacterial and they all oxygenate. So here's some I brought with me, and you can just pass these around, and you can just smell them. So there's little notes in here on the side that increase collagen, and the other side is for chronic pain over here. And so you can just smell them and look at the bottles and have fun with it. Yoga therapy, we know the modalities for yoga therapy. What does Amy Wheeler have to say on yoga therapy for EDS? EDS is a model for many things. Find clues. Look at secondary diseases in EDS. Fibromyalgia, too much brahmana. Osteopenia, too much brahmana. Cardiovascular, too much brahmana. EDS is mentally considered to be mentally rajasic. Remember the gunas. So it's like the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Rajas is too fast. Tamas is too slow. And sattva is just right. Right? So the body starts slowing down to conserve tamas. Loose skin and loose joints are tamasic. What, do you speed them up? After all, they're in tamas, right? If you speed them up, then you're contributing to the problem that got them there in the first place. If you slow them down, then you're going further into tamas. She says restorative yoga relaxes the body, but pulls strongly on the tendons, ligaments, and muscles, causing the joints to be lax. Practice every day. 90 days to see new some scars in mind, body, emotions, personality, and breath. Krishnamacharya said that skipping one day sets you back 30 days. So what do we subtract? What do we take out? High impact is a no-no for them. Blocks, depending, because in the beginning, the first year, I didn't use blocks. It was too aggressive for her spine. She was too sensitive. Later on, when she got stronger, her fear level dropped, she wanted to use blocks. Same thing with the foam roller. Inversions, no. Vinyasa flow, it's just too much. Twists, in the beginning, no. Eventually, we did gentle twisting with breath. Nothing extreme. Joint end range, absolutely not. Increased static duration. In the beginning, they're not going to be very strong, so they're not going to hold the pose very long. Later on, she can hold plank for 5 breaths. Sun salutations is just too much. Anything extreme, Hanumanasana, Ekapada Raja Kapotasana, just no, it's just too much. Deep open chain stretching is a no. What do you give them? Visualization, Yoga Nidra. These are the breaths. Om on exhale with strength and stretch. Amy Wheeler said strong Longana. So remember that every inhale is Brahmana, every exhale is Longana. Inhale expansion, exhale reduction. So something that takes care of both the symptoms and the root is strong Longana. So you could have them, if they're strong enough, you could have them in plank, inhale, and Om on the exhale, and that would make it into a Longana. So ultimately, breath is what makes it Longana or Brahmana. Proprioception, I won't go through all of this. Guiding them in the ability to sense the position of their body in space is important. Number 3, degree of effort involved in carrying out a movement. So she would be in plank, and all of a sudden her muscles would come into play and turn on, and she's like, oh my God, I didn't realize how hard this was. Because the nerves weren't sending the messages to the muscles to actually turn them on. So when they did turn on, she's like, wow, this is really hard work. I was like, yeah, it is. Yeah, you didn't know. So, I didn't really say that, but so here's some cues for them. A good one here is guide your bones into the joint sockets. This is important. Down at the bottom, dynamic movement. All of us as yoga therapists know that. Closed chain movement. So how do you make a hamstring stretch when you're in supine with your leg in the air? How do you make it closed chain? Anybody? Use a strap. Use a strap, right? That makes it closed chain. Quadruped, there's some ideas. Stabilization, strength isometrics are important. So moving on, observations from physical therapists, Anita Rissick-Lendock and Kelly Chun. Kelly Chun said basically the only thing that she uses with her EDS client is core Pilates. She mentioned that balance, and this is Kelly Chun. She mentioned that balancing how much exercise you do, she said sometimes if she does too much, the joints actually become looser. Strength-based is important. Anita Rissick mentioned resistant stretching, PNF, dynamic stretching. Follow-up 2 to 3 days after is really important for EDS patient. Acupuncture on EDS, I got a chance to talk with privilege to Dr. Mao Xingni, who works at Dao Wellness. He's been an acupuncturist for 30 years. Highly respect him. Spleen deficiency, he says that EDS is a spleen deficiency, governs the transformation and transportation. So imagine if LA traffic just stopped and didn't work. Would we be a little bit stuck, right? Would we be a little bit stuck? And so that's kind of, in a sense, what's kind of going on. Everything's stuck. Liver deficiency is a flow of energy. When you're happy, it's smooth, easy, and flowing. When it's not flowing, it's stagnant, and that contributes to anger, resentment, and stuck emotions. Observations from Dr. Mal of EDS patients: flaccid muscle, decreased digestion, loose bowels, low energy, worry, rumination, apathy. Children are slow developers. Electroacupuncture can tighten the joints. This is what he says. I got a chance to talk with a neuromuscular specialist, Dr. Sharon Ubiayan. Really great that I could talk with her. The only modality they use with EDS patients is education, so the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And we know how important patient education is. Thank you. However, that's the only one that they use. Observations of her were compression of brachial plexus nerves while sleeping due to collapsing of body in and itself from lack of collagen and hypermobile joints. So it's basically what we went over in that picture before when we talked about thoracic outlet syndrome. all that area just becomes collapsed, and it can cause a lot of pain. Therapeutic movement study on EDS found statistically significant positive effects on the patient's performance of daily activities, muscle strength, endurance, kinesiophobia, and smaller change in self-perceived pain. Another study, therapeutic movement study on EDS, education for this rare disease is valuable, although learning through experience can also contribute to knowledge base in this subject. Therapeutic movement that proved clinically effective was aquatic therapy, core stability training, proprioceptive exercises, muscle strength exercises, education, and reassurance. So here's a 2-year graph of my patient. I saw her for 2 years, and she reached a little under 50% of her full potential of strength in those 2 years, but she definitely gained in strength, which is wonderful. So my hypothesis, why is yoga therapy so important? So we're coming back to, well, I'll just keep going here. Why does changing your lifestyle work? Okay, so we talk about environment and lifestyle, and changing environment in yoga therapy. What's the physiology behind that? What is the physiological science behind the integrated medicine's realization that changing the environment, nurture, changes one's nature? So we have 50 trillion in some cells. What our cells need, our body needs. Biologist Dr. Bruce H. Lipton. Cells retreated from toxins that I introduced into the culture just as humans retreat from mountain lions and muggers in dark alleys. They gravitated to nutrients just as humans gravitate to breakfast, lunch, dinner, and love. He says that when he put chemicals into the system, the cells literally shove themselves against the blood vessels, trying to get away from the toxins. And so we're made of cells. If a bunch of people are shoved in a small space, do you think that we're going to start to faint and we're going to lose oxygen? And that's exactly what happens with the cells. Environmental, more fun with words. The iron that shapes you mentally shapes your biology. Protection versus growth. Imagine being in their skin again. Imagine the protective state, the sympathetic state that they would be in when they're in this kind of skin with no structure, no stability in their joints, no stability, no infrastructure in their skin. So there's 2 major cellular survival mechanisms, 2 basic cellular responses to environment. Research shows cells cannot exhibit both configurations at the same time. So it's impossible to be in parasympathetic and sympathetic at the same time, right? So protection, we all know about that. There's only one thing I want to look. Scared to death can actually be real. Paralysis, hypotension. Remember back to the hypotension of the patient and how she said she liked to watch serial killer shows that would calm her down. But was that really true relaxation? Because when she came in to me, and after she finished a yoga therapy session, she would say to me, oh my God, I feel so much better. I feel so relaxed. And every time her blood pressure had come up and normalized. Right? So this I'm calling a false sense of relaxation, just as it would be a false sense of relaxation for an alcoholic who thinks they need 7 to 12 beers to fall asleep, and really what they're doing is retarding their nervous system. They're not actually relaxing. Okay. So growth. Growth is just as important as protection. That's something we don't think about very often. Cells moving towards nutrient is growth, vitally important for survival. Entire cellular lining of your gut is replaced every 72 hours. Growth happens in parasympathetic. Cells moving towards nutrients expend energy, which is required to produce energy. You have to spend energy to produce energy. That is at a basic cellular physiological makeup. It's not right or wrong that we live on oxygen and water. It's not good or bad, it simply is. That's just how we're made, right? So why don't we listen to it? Body requires a certain amount of energy expenditure daily. This requires an open exchange between organism and environment. Communication. Remember she said, I feel like there's a miscommunication in my body. Something simple that would be communication is a food intake and elimination. Growth requires going beyond neutral. So to actually grow, we have to thrive, which means we want to have, it requires love and joy and living a fulfilling lifestyle, right? And the rest of this is the science of epigenetics, which is huge. It's been out for a long time. It just hasn't had the trickle-down effect to all of the lay audience, us mostly, except for yoga therapists. I think we know about it. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be doing yoga therapy. and yoga therapy wouldn't be working because we know the environment is really a huge impact on all of us. Genes cannot turn themselves off or on. In scientific terms, genes are not self-emergent. Something in the environment has to trigger gene activity. Conventional science, blinded by genetic dogma, simply ignored it. Yes, there's dogma in science just like there is in religion. Okay? What activates the genes? The answer was eloquently spelled out in 1990 in a paper entitled Metaphors and the Roles of Genes, developed by H.F. Nugent. Nugent presents evidence that the notion that genes control biology has been so frequently repeated for such a long period of time that scientists have forgotten it's a hypothesis, not a truth. In reality, the idea that genes control biology is a supposition which has never been proven and in fact has been undermined by the latest scientific research, epigenetics. The nucleus is not the cell's brain. Oh my God. Weren't we all taught in school that the nucleus is the brain of the cell? Right? The nucleus? Well, they did an experiment where they cut the nucleus out and the cell continued to live. And I'm not going to go into that whole experiment. It's extensive, but that was the basic gist of it. And so they found out that the nucleus is actually the cell's gonads. It's the reproductive area. Each cell, all 50 trillion cells, have a place where they take in chi, they take in energy, they eliminate, they have a reproduction system, and they have a brain. And the brain of the cell turns out to actually be the membrane. And a funny quote, males have always been accused of thinking with their gonads, so it's not entirely surprising that science has inadvertently confused the nucleus with the cell's brain. Isn't that something? Epigenetics. Control above the genes. Literally means control above the genes. Science about environmental signals select, modify, and regulate gene activity. Genes are not destiny. DNA blueprints passed down through genes are not set in concrete at birth. Guess what? Environment influences and if they didn't, if environment didn't influence them, we wouldn't be here. We would have not evolved. We had to adapt to the environment. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? Environment influences nutrition, stress, emotions can modify these genes without changing their basic blueprint. According to epigenetics, only 3 to 5% of disease, and epigenetics, by the way, is the reason that yoga therapy is now recognized in the NIH. If it wasn't for epigenetics, all about this environment and lifestyle change is what changes things, we would not be recognized in the National Institute of Health. I have strong feelings about that. Only 3 to 5% of disease is due to alteration of genetic code before birth. When I provided a healthy environment for my cells, they thrived. When the environment was less than optimal, the cells faltered. When I adjusted the environment, these 6 cells revitalized. If you're interested in that, you can also look up Dr. Otto Warburg, 1931, won a Nobel Prize. He was a doctor in chemistry and a doctor of medicine. And he found that in the lab that when they turned the oxygen down on the cells began to mutate. When they turned the oxygen up, the cells became healthy again. And also, the cells that mutated, they became anaerobic. Because what do? A healthy cell lives on oxygen. So what do you think the cells that mutated, they could no longer communicate with the cells that live on oxygen. And so what do you think these anaerobic cells now lived on? If they didn't live on oxygen, but they were continuing to exist, what do you think they lived on?
CO2.
Sugar.
Sugar.
Fermentation. Okay. One of the most active areas of science today, epigenetics is, that's what it is. Leading scientists are in fact familiar with this idea, but 99% of the population, the lay audience, are operating from antiquated, disempowered beliefs of being victims of our own genes. Hiring a yoga therapist. Oh my God. Can we be hired for acute care? Yes, we can. You can use prana chikitsa, energy treatment, if you're trained. And you can use all these modalities. Probably if we're working in acute care, we're not going to be doing any asana. If the doctor would ask us to do asana, yes, we're trained to do that, and we could do that, right? Referrals, we've heard about referrals for almost every class for 4 years. I just want to point out one thing here. It doesn't mean losing your patient. Something you learn in clinic, it takes a village, right? It takes a village. Almost every patient I have are seeing an acupuncturist. Some of them have psychotherapists. Some of them have PT they see intermittently. and they also see me. So it takes a village. Just because you refer out, you're not really referring out. That's actually a misnomer. You're just, it's a group of people that are caring for that person. And hopefully everything will move more in that direction. Referring to a yoga therapist, when should someone refer to us? When should a doctor refer to a yoga therapist? Well, typically post-acute care, unless you're working in the acute care arena, a doctor may refer a patient to a yoga therapist anytime a patient can benefit from balance of body, balance of breath, balance of mind, balance of intellect, and balance of spirit. Your point of view is your point of view. And then my thank yous to all my lovely people. I did about 11 interviews. I obviously wasn't able to include all that information. Dr. Phil Ricciazzi, a doctor of chiropractic, he had a lot of good things to say. Maureen Davis and Teresa Armenia, Reiki Master. So thank you very much.
Excellent job. I'm gonna let you call around for everybody.
Nicole?
Yeah, just to
Okay.
get feedback from everybody. And by the way, you were less than your time, even with all that, even with all that chaos.
I went like a speed racer. I was so worried I wouldn't have enough time. Okay. Yeah, so, anybody have anything they want to say? Yeah.
I think it was really awesome to see how well you embodied it. It was almost like I could almost sense how you had to slow yourself down. Like it was just like coming through like really, really quick and very naturally. And I love that you kept coming back to Bruce Lipton. I think his work is brilliant, and it really speaks to how the physical embodiment really functions, and that it operates a lot on that subconscious level that he always spoke so much about. I think that was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Along with everything else, a lot of good learning.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Go last. Everybody gets to speak.
Yeah, everybody gets to speak.
Yeah, I say the same. I think you really, I think this is amazing. I knew nothing about it, so I was really happy with all the information you included. And I really liked your creativity with using quotes and words. I thought that was really cool that you incorporated that. You have a lot of passion for this, or it seems like you have a lot of passion for
I
this.
do.
And you have a lot of compassion, as you mentioned, for these people, and that really came through. And I think, you know, this came out with a lot of heart, and it was really noticeable, really obvious. Really
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate it.
I like the way you use your yoga powers to calm yourself down and keep you on track. Pretty amazing. Congratulations. And the energy that you put in the presentation was amazing. Pretty cool. The epigenetics part is
I love that part too, yeah.
amazing.
Which part?
The epigenetics.
I love that subject.
It's so true, and thank you to
Yeah,
it's very connected to yoga therapy practice, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it all. Congratulations. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Andre.
Good job, despite all the distractions and everything. I loved how you tied in like love and our bodies, and all the pictures were really great. And I liked the quotes too. So, really good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, Arena. I never heard of this disease before. It's eye-opening. You were very poised and composed. And you spoke so fluidly that it was a pleasure, and all of the interactionary things that you passed around added more dimensions to what you were saying. And I just loved it.
Thank you.
I love the compassion that you brought to it, and all of the information. You seem to really have a comprehensive understanding of what she's going through physiologically, emotionally, spiritually. And I wish there were a way to get this out to the general public. I know someone in Mid-America who suffers from it, and you know, I think there's such limited information that people have in the treatment of it.
Yeah.
And your presentation was very exciting. You seemed excited by it, and it kept us really very involved.
Good,
So, yeah.
good, thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So great, very professional, and I feel like you could also expand it as well, like more time, because it's just so informative. I didn't know anything about this, and it just gives me a different, you know, information, of course, I didn't have, and it was so complete, and you were so resourceful. And I also was super impressed that like your presentation turned out so beautifully, and your slideshow was just really great and very dynamic as well, and you were able to merge, you know, the West with the East really nicely, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I just can join all others who talked before me.
Yes.
I did not know about this condition,
Okay.
and it was a really very informative presentation for me. Sometimes I may have to go back to, you know, I would like to study it a little bit more,
Yes.
because it was so, and I liked your enthusiasm and compassion that I came through, you know, that came really through with, and I could feel your connection with your client. It's, yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and I would have, for those of you who don't know, this was Anna's first time doing any slides, right? It was
Yeah.
totally brand new. Like, what do you mean? Where do I even find slides? Where, how do I even do that? And you would, I mean, have no, it was really professional. So, really, really impressive, especially, I'm kind of blown away first time. And I agree, just echoing everybody, your compassion and enthusiasm, and I love your focus on understanding the patient's perspective, starting off with know who you are before you're with the patient. So I think those are really important points that you brought up, know who you are, and then also really understand the patient. And I think that's beautiful. Your visuals, that was great, like everyone said. And I really enjoyed your cellular hypothesis. Like we had talked about before, it's really, you had a lot of substance behind that, and it's making me think even more in that, and I thank you for that. It's kind of opened my eyes to something a little bit deeper that I want to look into even more so. So really, really great.
Thank you.
So
Very cool.
excellent job.
I love the interactive part with the oils in the book.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Did any of you smell any of the oils?
All of
Yeah.
them.
All of them? Oh, cool.
What's
They smell, they're earthy, right?
How do you say the guaiawood, whatever that?
Guaiac
Guaiawood? That's
Guaiawood.
really earthy smell, yeah.
Yeah, that's from, guaiac tree is considered to be the hardest wood. It actually sinks in water. And it's something that I used when I was in my motorcycle accident. I used on my leg a whole lot, but I actually used it before I did my PT exercises that I was given. It's very thick and savvy. If you look at the bottle, if you can see the bottle's dark, but it's actually hardened. So right now you have to actually heat it up. So it's a little bit high maintenance for people, but they actually have to heat it up for about 5 minutes and then wait till it cools down, and it's warm, salve-like, smells like vanilla and earth, and it's awesome, and you just rub it into your skin, and it's amazing.
So it's more topical than like just aromatic weed therapy?
All of these are meant to be, they're medicine, yeah. The aromatics is great because that affects the limbic system of your brain, the oldest system, and it goes into the brain immediately, the fastest, but these are all medicine that are meant to be put on to your skin topically. So, and actually more enters your system through the skin than taking them internally, if you would at any time. I don't recommend taking them internally unless you put it in a tea, or unless you've used them for a long time and you know yourself. Because the GI tract really only 50% goes into your system when you take them internally. 50% goes in if you take them through the epidermis, and 20% goes into you if you take them internally. So more goes in actually into your system, again, talking about the skin and how sensitive, how incredibly intelligent our skin is. what you put on the skin goes into your system faster and to a greater degree than what you take internally because of the GI tract.
Do you use them with your client, and what is the Egyptian geranium for?
The Egyptian geranium is known as regeneration, cell regeneration, skin regeneration. There's many others that are too, but these are ones that I specifically chose. So, yeah, and they all, yeah.
Did you use them with your client?
You know, she was actually not into the oils. So to be honest, I actually didn't use the oils with her. I used them very, very slowly. She had a very high level of fear, and I molded to that, of course. And so the only way I ever used oils with her eventually was just on my hands during Shavasana, during the final relaxation. And she actually got used to them, and she eventually did start to ask some questions on them. And she keeps asking more questions, but I can't push it with her. So I didn't use them with her, but I use them with almost everyone to some degree.
Yeah.
You know, it all depends. It usually takes time for them to warm up to them, depending on the person. I never push the oils. And if they're new to me, I ask them if they're okay with the smell, and then I go from there. So
It's interesting because MD, as we know it, right, allopathic medicine, before the turn of the century in the late 1800s, they were known as snake oil.
I know. Yeah.
Because they use potions, that's kind of, and oils and things like that. So it's kind of
Yeah.
funny that they don't accept it as much anymore.
Well, people, yeah, I put up with, people sometimes call my dad a snake oil salesman, People are like, is he a charlatan, is he this or that, but it's oxygen, it's medicine that oxygenates. You think about, we live, like I said, it's not good or bad, we live on oxygen, that's what our cells live on. So if we're not supporting our prana, our cells, with what they actually live on, how is that helping, even in yoga, with pranayama, we want to support the system. So medicinally, don't we want to support the system with our food? Don't we want to support the system? So we want to support the system with the medicine that you use. If the cells are running away from chemicals that are introducing the toxins, what do you think that's doing to us? Because we're just a bunch of cells, essentially. So it's just something to think about,
I love that you paid homage to the skin so much. I think like the skin is so relevant. One thing like Mr. Angar always talked about, probably more than anything else, like was the skin. He was always about like that dermal representation of health. Like that's how he used alignment. Like how does the skin look in this part of the leg or in this part of the toe? Like that's all he talked about with the skin.
Really?
Yeah. Interesting.
Just the Koreans, the whole reason they do the scrubs is the Korean scrub,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
is because the skin is our largest organ, and they believe that it can't be clogged with dead skin. You have to keep it so that it can oxygenate, which kind of goes along with what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it's the gua sha and acupuncture where they scrape the skin. I didn't go over that, but it's in one of those list of modalities where they scrape the skin. He said they do that. Dr. Albert Vaca said they do that a lot with children too. And they just scrape the skin and they get rid of the dead skin cells, so the blood rushes to that area, that chi rushes to that area. It's a little bit, for children, it's a little easier than sticking them with needles. So, yeah, so.
We clearly embody the information. You give such a presence of really knowing your stuff. And I've never heard you speak so fast.
That's right. You haven't seen me in front of her. When I teach yoga, I speak much slower, but
Really is.
all right.
Yeah.